think has become a big mindfuck, because I think a lot of women tend to believe that it's something that they can't change, right? It's something that you have and you have to live with for your life. And I think I want to debunk that a little bit with you tonight and give you some perspectives and some really actionable strategies of how you can kick that in the butt once and for all. So that would be my goal for you. And it's going to be a mix. So I really would encourage you to use the chat to, like, you know, even if it's not a question, just sharing your realizations while I talk, or like input or anything, because then I can always engage with you and, like, you know, use that and kind of integrate it in what I'm talking about. I've also planned a couple of interactive, like, breakout sessions for you guys to really apply what we're talking about tonight. So I hope that you have a safe space, that you have, you know, the headspace to do this right now, to engage in this, because from my experience, that's when you're taking the most away from this. That's kind of our plan. Have some water nearby or something to drink if you can, to make sure you stay hydrated. Let me think, anything else I wanted to say? Right. So obviously, like, my work, especially when I work with people one-to-one, is quite deep psychological. So sometimes what happens when I do workshops is that it can bring up things for you, because I talk about certain things that are a trigger for you, right? There's emotions coming up, maybe there's resistance coming up, maybe, like, I've even had people who told me, like, years later that they hated me walking out of one of my workshops, and I was like, okay. So if this happens, right, first of all, know it's normal. And second of all, know that you can reach out, right? So either you immediately raise your hand and we'll talk it through, or you can reach out to me later on LinkedIn, because my priority is that this is safe for you, right? Like, that you don't walk away from this feeling wounded. Like, I want you to walk away from this feeling stronger. So I really hope that we can all agree on that. So I see a few nods. Yeah, good. Second organizational thing is, I'm not very skilled with Teams. So if the screen sharing doesn't work correctly at some point, you just let me know. Please speak up if the whatever sound isn't translating properly or something like this, or I forget to read the chat and reply to you. Just let me know, right? Just unmute and we'll deal with that. Good. So let's get started, and let me try and share the screen with you. Can we all see the slides? Okay, amazing. That's a good start. Cool. So yeah, this is, I think I said that. Triggers, chat, yeah, use the chat. Oh, please, and I think this is really important amongst women. I'm assuming if you're in a network like this probably goes without saying, but I want to mention it again. Please, no judgment if anybody shares something, right? I think the most important thing with women empowerment is that we make each other bigger and not smaller. So just remember that for sure. And if you can, after this, go for a walk, unwind a little bit. Don't just jump into the next thing straight away. It's kind of like what I'm recommending. Good. So let's see if the sound is translating. I brought a little video, and while watching this mini video, since we're doing the Olympics, I thought I'm going to bring Simone Biles. Watch this and see what kind of lessons already in this little trailer are in there for female leadership, and then start sharing that in the chat, right? Because I want to have a little conversation about this. Okay. Right, let's try this and see if the sound works. Can you guys hear this? No, the sound is not translating. Let me see if I can change that. There we go. Okay. Does it work now?
I've always had really good intuition about things, and unfortunately, I felt that way about the Olympics.
Simone is a once-in-a-lifetime athlete.
She's not just dominant, she is pushing herself.
Now, the greatest ever, Simone Biles.
Wow. Never in my life have I seen her do that, never.
So, having these mental blocks in the gym recently.
Simone Biles is out of the competition tonight.
People love to watch the come up.
I'm smiling.
As soon as you win, God, I hate her. But everything that happened, it's a trauma response. I wanted to quit like 500,000 times, and I would have if it weren't for my people. We want to make sure that she's in a great place.
She's the greatest in the world, but she's also human.
She bounced back and she really opened my eyes.
I knew it would be a long journey, but to me, it wasn't done. Sometimes you have to take that power back. It's not all about Jim. Like, life moves on.
The Vogue cover gonna be like right there. You know what I'm saying? I'm gonna blow my baby up.
She came back to the gym, basically staying in shape.
I'm going for another Olympic run.
I know that she's expected to win all the gold medals, but even the fact she's trying to come back is really amazing.
I never thought I'd be at this phase still doing it. I feel very grateful. I get to write my own ending.
All right. So, most important lesson already put on the slide. Remember, you can write your own ending. What other kind of female leadership lessons were in there? You can either unmute. Okay, I was gone, right? Okay, cool. I can start sharing. Yeah, like it's a documentary on Netflix, so if you haven't watched it, definitely do. I think it's a great recommendation. Okay, another recommendation. Good. So share in chat, just type in. Yeah, it's also about life. Was one lesson. To trust your intuition. To not stop when you feel like quitting. Support yourself with surround yourself with supportive people. Another important one. You can also unmute yourself if you prefer that, depending on how quick your typing is. Yeah, supportive network. What do you think was the lesson around hate? I mean, she mentioned something about hate when you win. What's the lesson in that, or the challenge that I think both men and women are facing, but especially women are facing? It's also one of the reasons why Taylor Swift canceled her concerts in Vienna. Yeah, Kelly?
Hi.
Hi.
Can you listen? Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, I feel it's really hard. Like we always hear about supporting other women, but when it's competition between women, it's like, that's what she said. You know, you feel the hate. Oh, I hate her, because we need to support women. But then once you lose to another woman, it feels like the competition just gets harder, I guess.
Yeah, because what have most women learned in terms of like if someone else is successful, what is the danger to your own success? What have most women learned? Do you want to answer that? Or should I? So most women have learned that if someone else is successful, there's not enough space left for you. We have not been raised to see that if someone else is successful, it's actually opening the room of opportunities for you. It's going to make it easier for you to do the same thing or to be as successful, if not more. Right? And some people try to argue that via biological traits to say, okay, as women, we always had to compete for like the best kind of like man. So if this one is gone, like, you know, there's nothing left for us. But this is this is like, they call it in personal development work, they call it shadow work, right? So like, this is when your shadows are coming up, like her being really successful triggers your shadow of like fearing that there's not going to be enough left for you, not enough of the cake. Yeah. And this is one of the biggest limiting beliefs that women have that leads to women not supporting each other. And that is really dangerous, right? So it's really important that you do yourself to realize, and this is something, especially since I started my own business, I'm realizing other women's success just means that they're paving the ground for me to have it easier. Yeah, and this is a belief that I would encourage you guys very much to have. Yeah. We have one more, which is we can go forward. There's no backwards. Completely agree, Emma. Okay, thank you. Cool. Some other things that she had in there, right, is this thing of like quitting and to continue even if you feel like quitting. Or I think the point that I would rather make is she didn't push through, right? She said, well, mental health wise, I'm having these twisties. So like she was literally in danger if she would have continued to do the sport, and she took a step back. She's like, I'm going to listen to my needs right now. Yeah. And then I'm going to come back, but I'm not going to let doubts keep me from coming back. I will keep going, because I think this is like another thing, especially with women that I see, is that as soon as we start doubting ourselves, we stop. And we think it's not normal that we doubt ourselves, but it's normal, right? Like even someone as successful as her in her sport, they call it the GOAT, right? The greatest of all time, is someone who has doubts. So this is normal. We need to normalize having doubts. Yeah, that's, I think, one thing as well. Emilia, let me just read your question. How do you know when to quit versus when to push forward? I find it can be difficult to separate intuition and being anxious, wanting to quit. Yeah, okay, I see nodding. This is like one of the, yeah, it's like a really frequent question that I get. It takes a bit of like introspection, but over time you're going to realize when is anxiety kicking in and when is your intuition or your gut feeling telling you that this is the right thing, right? If you look at someone like Simone Biles, I think she said it in the video as well. She said, like, I knew I wasn't done. But I'm pretty sure she had like so many fears around coming back, right? If you're someone that's expected to always win gold medals, right? There's like not a lot of room for failure for her. So I'm pretty sure her intuition was the one that told her, like, we're not done, we need to try this again. It probably triggered a lot of anxiety. So I think the art is to learn how to hold anxiety, process anxiety, not push yourself over the edge, because that's what I see many women do, right? We push too much. We don't take breaks. We don't take care of ourselves when we need a break. But to still stay consistent, to keep going with the things that deep down in your gut, in your bones, you know you're supposed to do. And I don't know if that resonates with you, Amelia. Otherwise, try and ask me that question again. But this is like, that's been my experience. Sometimes the things that scare you the most are the things that actually your intuition tells you to go for. For me, it's been things like starting my own business. Like for me, the scariest thing was after living abroad for many years to move back home and then trying to reintegrate in the rural life in northern Germany, right? Like that fucking scared me. Like I took over a year to make that decision. So there's a lot of things like that where you know deep down this is the right thing, but it scares you. And it's important that you learn to manage and process your anxiety, but you don't let it make your decisions for you. Yeah, totally. Like, I think it's so important to take your foot off the gas, right? Like almost like what I'm going to teach you guys in a minute is that rest and recovery and taking space for yourself is the thing that accelerates you. Because if you constantly keep going, it's not going to work. It's not going to work. Like you will burn out literally over time. Yeah. Okay, let me just see. Is there anything else? Oh yeah. So one thing I'm going to talk about, and then she mentioned as well, is taking your power back. And I don't know if that you guys know what that means, but what I see so many women do is we give so much power to the outside. So societal expectations, what we think we should be doing, different definitions of success, what people tell us we should be like, right? So we give a lot of power to the outside. And what she said by saying like, well, nobody at my age, she's 27, right? There's not a lot of like 27-year-old Olympic gymnasts, right? Like a couple of years ago, your career ended at like 22, 23 latest. So coming back at 27 and competing at the Olympics is literally changing the rules of the game. So you can ask yourself for your career and the way you're designing your life, where do you want to put your own type of rules forward? Where are you giving power away to the outside because you're following rules that you haven't vetted and consciously agreed to for yourself? And that's, I think, one lesson that she's sharing as well in all of this. Yeah. I don't know if that's answering your question as well, Emma. I think we need to start seeing taking risk as a productivity measure. I'll have like a little case study on that later as well with one of my clients. Okay, so this is Simone Biles. Another thing that's also really central in female leadership is vulnerability. So I don't know if you guys have heard about this. If you don't know the work of Brené Brown yet, I highly recommend that. But she's being very vulnerable with like even this documentary, right? Like how she's showing herself and how she's talking about this. And in the documentary, she also talks about the abuse cases with Larry Nassar. He was like the doctor of the US gymnastics team, and he abused girls for years. And she was one of his victims. So like, that's like one thing that makes her stronger by unpacking that really. Dimitra, every few years I start all over again, despite my age. Nice. Do you have an example of how you started over? Do you want to share one? I think you're muted for now.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes. Hello. So I left my country at the age of 44. I left everything. I came to England to pursue a new career, a new master's degree. I didn't succeed much, but now at the age of 51, with another master's, I am in neuroscience. So I'm changing every few years. I'm changing a little bit my scope, you know.
Nice.
This is it.
Yeah. And does it work well for you to change the scope? Is this something that energizes you?
It hasn't worked for me so far. I don't know. Maybe it's me blocking something.
Mm-hmm.
I was unsuccessful back home. I'm unsuccessful in the UK. But again, maybe now something happens. I don't know. I'm changing from special educational needs into neuroscience. So the learning is great. I'm happy. Whatever comes in the future is welcome.
Mm-hmm.
Career-wise, I mean.
Yeah.
It's not easy.
Yeah. Maybe like we'll have a little part later on. One question that's always interesting to ask is, what does success even look like for you, right? Because sometimes we also take on definitions from society of what that looks like. And then the other thing, if this is like a pattern, feel free to get in touch with me later. In terms of like you said unsuccessful. Sometimes we have like really deep-rooted belief patterns in our subconscious that lead to us constantly sabotaging ourselves. That can also be a thing, but that's probably not fully like the scope of what we can get into today, but just as a note, maybe. Yeah.
We can talk about it later, but for me, success is to apply what you have studied for. For example, I can see very young ladies here that will finish with their studies in a few years, a master's or a PhD maybe. If they cannot apply that knowledge, this is unsuccessful. For example, when I came here, I studied special educational needs, but I'm still a teaching assistant.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so keep that thought for a discussion later, because if I was going to take your definition, I would probably be crazy unsuccessful in my career right now. Because I do a lot of stuff that I didn't study.
I'm happy with whatever I have done. I don't regret it. It's my third master's. Every few years I change, but I'm happy with that. But job-wise, it hasn't taken me anywhere. Maybe it's me blocking me. I'm repeating, yeah? I want to be clear.
Okay. Hold that thought. We can
Thank you.
do it.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks for sharing that, though. Thank you. Okay, great. So I'm just going to give you guys a short introduction to me. I think some of the facts were already mentioned, but just so you know, I'm not a PhD level scientist, but I've worked with many over the last 5 years. So yeah, I did my MBA. I'm a business major, so a lot of my experience, I decided not to list it in detail because I was like, okay. But yeah, I worked in the airline industry for a while. I did startups. I have a family background in SMEs in Germany, so I've done like lots of different types of things. I've worked in controlling, project management, consulting, program management, different tech things. I lived in 5 different countries. So I feel like I've seen a bit. And I'm like someone who loves the outdoors. Like the biggest achievement this summer was like after 7 years of having this on my list, I went to Ladakh, which is a Himalayan region in the north of India, and I climbed up to over 5,000 meters. So I'm really proud of myself for that. It was really tough on my body though. Yeah, and now I work as a coach, and if I'm being honest, I think I was into this topic of personal development probably at least since I was 13, because this is when we moved again as a family. I was bullied at school, and a lot of like, I had already had to start questioning like, who am I? What are my values? How will I position myself in these situations? And honestly, for me, I think this is one of the reasons why I now do what I do. And I have clients sometimes who are much, much older than me, because I've been working in this field technically for quite a while, for like 20 years pretty much now. But I think another thing that I wanted to tell you guys around me is, where I first started my career, I started off wanting to be the better man, right? So like I grew up in a household where my mom was staying at home, my dad was the CEO of a company. So a lot of how success works in the professional world, I learned from my dad. My first job was in air cargo, right? So very male dominated. Like one of my first jobs was to optimize processes in cargo warehouses. So you can imagine how many women are there, not a lot of them. And honestly, I think I had a phase when I was rejecting women or feminine traits, or, like I had lots of these cliches of like, oh, drama queens and emotional and too soft and whatever, right? So like I tried to be this really tough, like kind of a strong woman that was probably like even stronger than a lot of the men. Like I've had a lot of bosses that told me they were scared of me. They said it jokingly, but I think there was some truth to it. But eventually that led to me burning out. Like my first burnout was in 2015. So it's something where I had to really, let's say, take myself apart and reassemble myself. And I think this is something that over the last few years in my coaching, I mainly do leadership coaching or helping people transition careers. But what I've realized is all of a sudden there were more women coming to me saying like, hey, Steffi, I feel so strained. I'm constantly putting so much pressure on myself. Like, it's maybe even affecting my marriage or my relationship. I don't enjoy things as much anymore. I don't get to relax. I'm constantly on. Like, how can I change that? And this is when I started bringing in a lot of the things that I learned in my yoga teacher training around feminine, masculine energy. And this is what I want to share with you ladies tonight, because in my mind, if we embrace this as women, we're really taking our power back. And it's also something where I feel like, because you guys work in a certain field, and my feeling, at least from talking to Lizzie, was that it's also an intention to change your field a little bit. Yeah. Hopefully something that when you embody this is something you can bring into your field as well. Because I think as much as we as women need to step it up, we also have a lot of structural problems that we can address, but we can only address them if we are doing the work on ourselves. That's what I believe. Right. So I think a little bit of behind the scenes, I already gave you a bit of background, but I think I had a phase, or I hit a phase where I was really successful at what I was doing, but I felt very disconnected from who I was. And for me, a lot of this work I have done helped me reconnect with myself, and then radiating out, which I sometimes feel shows in these pictures, depends. But it's like now a lot of things find me. Thank you. Now a lot of things find me because I'm just embodying more who I am and connecting with myself. And I think this is what, as women, we don't get taught, especially not in our professional life. And I'm hoping that maybe you can walk away from today trying to do that a bit more for yourself, because it usually makes you healthier, gives you more charisma, makes you happier with everything that you're doing. So this is what I found, right? As ambitious ladies, we often have adapted masculine traits as success traits in our careers. So basically, and this is where imposter syndrome comes in, by definition, we have learned that it's not safe or not okay to be ourselves, right? This is part of what we learn when we enter the professional world, especially if it's male dominated. And I'm not saying this because I'm anti-men, right? Like, men have not built the professional world to do something bad to us, but they were the ones building the professional world. So obviously they build it to their strength. That's what we would do as well, right? If we used to run households, we build it to our strengths as well. So, but the problem now is, as women, we have been pushed to be more successful, but we have never questioned how success works for women. And this is something that leads to things like imposter syndrome. Men have imposter syndrome too, by the way, but this is maybe why more women struggle with this. And the question that I'm trying to bring out into the world right now is that, what if we could become even more successful while embracing ourselves, right? Our feminine traits, but also your individual traits, because we're not all the same as women as well. And for this, I hope you guys have your phone. I would like to do a little kind of live survey. So let me know if the scanning works. And then you should see 2 questions where there's something on a scale from 1 to 10. And if it's not working, let me know. Yeah, you can see it? Okay, can you vote or? Okay. Seems to be working. Let me quickly switch the screen share. You can all see that. Okay, can we see this? Good. You're a very 50-50 group. Nicely in the middle. Yeah. Did you both answer both of the questions? Okay, sounds good. Cool. Right. So this is always a question, right? If we talk about being successful while being yourself, we have to ask, first of all, how successful are you? Or in your definition. And we're going to need this later for the discussion, but you can already ask yourself, based on which criteria did you just rate this number? Yeah, what is definition? Like, how did you judge your success? And then the second question is, how much are you yourself? And this is often the ranking that I get. It's kind of in the middle. Yeah, there's like a little bit of me being myself, but there's also a bit of not being myself. Obviously, we all, are part of communities and organizations. And yes, you can never like be 100% always push your ego through. This is not what I'm talking about. But like, how much are you following something that feels like it's a purpose of yours? It's like your intuition that has guided you to this. And how much are you, really yourself, even if sometimes we have jobs that are not the perfect fit, we can still be ourselves while doing the job. And this is always what I recommend to people when I talk about career coaching and finding the ideal job. So many people are like, how do I find this job? And I'm like, well, by being yourself, because you're going to reject the jobs that are not a great fit by being yourself, right? These people won't want to hire you if you're not fit for you. So the more you are yourself, the more you can find the right match. It's like dating. I don't know who of you guys is like married or in a relationship, right? But similar. If you're not yourself, it's most likely that you're going to attract a partner that's not really a great match for who you really are. And this is how I like to think about careers as well. Okay, good. So let me try and switch to the second slide because I want to get a bit of input now on what keeps you from being yourself. Can you see that on your screen right now? Okay. Okay. Are you guys submitting stuff? No. Okay, so it's not showing. Oh, I see. We need to present this. Let's see if that works. Can you see it now? Okay. You guys need to let me know if I'm screwing up the technical side of things. Thank you. Okay. Yeah. Keep putting this in. All right, Emilia, you asked me, how do you balance choosing a job for yourself versus a job with more growth when you're early on in your career? I'm still an undergrad. Okay, I always have a tendency to ask coaching questions back, so if you want, you can unmute yourself. I find it interesting that for you, it seems to be two conflicting things. Why is it not something for yourself if it offers growth?
I think, hi, by the way.
Hi.
I think in my mind, at this stage of my career, meaning I'm only 2 years into my undergraduate studies, but I feel that the most growth, I'm going to have to work harder, do more, do stuff that are less aligned with me to get to where I need to go. And when I reach a certain point, I'll have reached a level of success, whatever I define that to be, to then start bringing in more aspects of myself. Because I think if I went now and did whatever brought me most joy, I don't think it would provide enough like stability and opportunities. I kind of have to balance in my mind reality versus, you know, that's what I'm kind of, it's my mindset anyway.
Okay. I'm going to give you a slightly provocative perspective and you can see if that works for you, right? I totally get that. And in my experience, the more I do what's me, the more successful I become. And it's been like this from my very first job. I've never, ever taken a job that wasn't aligned, right? I'm not saying I wasn't ready to work hard. And even your dream job has things that is like sometimes they suck, right? And you don't feel like doing them. So I'm not trying to build this picture of like it's always going to be perfect and every morning you're just going to like enjoy 100% of what you're doing. But the thing is, like, I get so many people who are like, oh, once I reach this goal, then I'm finally going to feel successful. Then I'm finally going to feel happy. Then I can finally be myself. And I have people in their 50s who never reach that point. So the question is, when do you want to start? Yeah, and my recommendation is, like, I was talking to someone today from the US actually, and she said to me, she's like, I love that you're being a coach right now because I'm in my 50s and I did a career for 30 years that I didn't enjoy, and I'm trying to do it now, right? So she was telling me that my youth is actually an advantage in starting to be myself sooner because she now feels she has too much legacy to do that switch. So I think you can ask yourself, what is the perspective that resonates with you? Right? You can tell yourself the story of like, I need to balance reality and myself. Or you can say, I can actually only be successful if I'm myself. And you seem to be someone, based on what you're asking me, who seems to enjoy growth, right? Because otherwise you wouldn't be asking me that question, right? There's some people like, I don't care about growth.
No, I love what you're saying as well. In every aspect, I'm willing to learn. So
yeah, so like that's part of yourself, right? That you want a job that offers growth. And yes, of course, sometimes we need to balance different aspects of what's important to us and prioritize, right? But you can do that. If growth right now is your number one priority, go for growth.
I like that. Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome. Thanks for asking that question. Good. Right, so let me see what we have here. What keeps you from being yourself? Not knowing who that is. Okay, good one. Fear of my boss. Find a different boss is my recommendation. If you have someone who doesn't want to see you grow and unfold, find a different boss. Yeah, because that is part of you not believing in your own greatness. So you found yourself someone who keeps you small to reconfirm that. It's not like it's always about taking responsibility, right? Expectations, I get that all the time. I'll go into this a little bit later. You have to ask yourself if you're ready to give away that much power over your own choices to what you think other people think, right? A lot of the times it's also interpreted expectations, especially with parents and family. I can tell you from experience, we always do deep work with all my one-on-one clients on family scenarios. And most of the time, I can say from what my research says, parents just want you to be happy. And they try to teach you what they have learned happiness can look like. But it might be very different for you. So expectations is one of the biggest things that keeps women small. Fuck expectations. Ask yourself what your expectations towards yourself are. Yeah. Okay, let me just quickly. I'll talk about how you can discover yourself in a minute. Thanks for the question. Let me just quickly see. Yeah, other people. Fear, I think I mentioned that already. It is a skill nowadays to learn to process anxiety. I think we all know anxiety. We all know how that feels. And none of us have learned to sit with our emotions and to learn how to process them and how to survive. So at the end, I actually have I created, for that exact reason, I created a little mini email course with a few modules. And one of the modules is going to be how do you learn to process your emotions better? So if you want, you can sign up to that later and it's for free. So you can just try that a little bit. Okay, system issues. Yeah, I mean, like the system thing, guys, there is some factual systemic problems. But in my experience, there's already enough institutions, organizations, jobs, individuals in organizations that are ready to create the right space for you. So go find those people. Yeah. And you're not gonna, if you tell yourself you have a lack of power, you're not gonna grow your power. So use the power you already have and then keep growing from there, right? I would also love to have a social media reach of 5 million, because then I could reach even more women. But I'm going to make do with 3,000 for now. You got to work with what you have and grow it from there. Yeah. Okay. Let me just see. How can I discover myself? There is so many opportunities to do that. Coming to workshops like these is always a great start. There is a lot of different books on these kind of things. You always, again, with this intuition, see what resonates with this, and also don't have the expectation that getting to know yourself is ever going to be done. I think just make sure that whatever you know about yourself right now, you build your life around you so that it resonates, because then you will get the next challenges that, again, will teach you something new about yourself and that will grow you, right, Amelia, into the next version of yourself. That's going to maybe make different choices. It's fine to evolve and change. But I think I know too many women that know themselves and then reject themselves the kind of opportunities that really resonate. And this is what makes me sad. But it doesn't mean that you can't change your opinion in 5-10 years from now, right? We heard that from Dimitra earlier. You have changed. You've made different choices. That's fine. Especially nowadays, it's never been that easy to change, right? It's not I don't know, you're born somewhere in the Middle Ages and you have to take over your dad's blacksmith business, right? We have so many opportunities nowadays. We have access to so much knowledge, to so much input. to networks like these. Sometimes it's overwhelming, but it's honestly a privilege, especially in the Western world, that we even get to think about stuff like this right now. Does that kind of answer your question? How do I pronounce your name, Jihad? I can't see your camera right now. I hope that helps. Okay. Let me just quickly see. I'm leaving the TA permanent job where I find it's not served at all. So I just, yeah. Sometimes it's terrifying to leave certain things. And of course, it's important to find a balance there, right? To not overstretch yourself as well. That's one thing for sure. Okay, cool. Man, I think we got way too much material. The discussion is already too great. Okay, cool. So this is a little bit of what keeps you from being yourself, and everything I see on here is something that you can change. And if it's not something you can change on the outside, you can change your perspective on it, right? And this is where the power lies. Like, how do you look at this? We heard earlier from Simone Biles, it's so important to choose your environment of supportive people. So if you have a shitty boss or institution or rules that really suck, then find a different supportive environment. Because for some people, even rules were made up initially to support people. Yeah, so like when I started my own business, I realized I started appreciating how great certain rules are. Because I'm like, great, that gives you a framework, right? Like as an entrepreneur, every day you need to make tons of choices because there's no rules. So sometimes rules can simplify, can expedite decisions. It can be a good thing. But if it's not your type of rules, find a different environment. That's pretty much what my recommendation is around this. Okay, let's quickly go back to the presentation. Okay. Is there any questions right now at this point, other than what you've shared? Okay. Good. So you can unmute yourself and just shout in. My question to you is, if you look at this set of traits, which of these traits or activities do you associate with success and successful people? Or you can drop it in a chat if that's easier. Sorry, didn't see this yet. Okay, environment. Okay, confidence, task focus, structure, intellect, assertiveness, clarity. All of them, yeah. Okay, Amila is saying I usually don't see this list. In the interest of time, I'm just gonna quickly jump over. But the things. Okay, I'm back. Success. A lot of this, like you said, right? Task will go structure, intellect, always be doing things, clarity, all of this stuff. Some people on my last workshop also mentioned some of the brown ones. I mean, empathy, I think, creativity, it's all stuff that's a bit more accepted nowadays as successful traits as well. And this is kind of like the point that I was making earlier about feminine and masculine traits, because let's skip this for a second, but this is kind of like the definition, partly derived from like yoga philosophy, around what are masculine and feminine traits. And a lot of what you guys mentioned in the chat is the male associated, masculine associated. I'm not even saying male associated, but masculine traits, right? Women also have masculine traits, but it's more the left side that we see as successful traits. And I think this is one of the reasons why a lot of women don't feel like they can be themselves and be successful, because we also feel we have a lot of the right side. We have stuff on the left side for sure, we all do. But the question is always like, to what extent, right? Percentage-wise, how much of the time am I in this or that energy? And especially what I see as a big problem for women is when they start having kids, because then they're way more on the right side and less on the left side in their personal life. And then they go to work and they have to be full on the left side. And this is why so many women feel torn, in my experience, from what I see in my clients. Right? Because it's not very common that you have things like, oh, in the boardroom, right? Like, my gut feeling tells me you really should go for this strategy. It's usually like, give me the data, give me a full-on analysis. And I worked in financial controlling for 2 years, so I've done lots of analysis, and I've tweaked a lot of analysis so that they have the results and the conclusions that management wanted. So that's a totally different discussion. But there's so many things that we actually need on the right side. One of the reasons why we have so many mental health problems right now for people in their professions is because we don't have enough nurturing energy in the business world, right? Nurturing energy is looked down upon, right? If you're the person in a job that's always taking care of everyone, it's usually underpaid, not valued. You can see that societally. A lot of the nurturing energy jobs, like being a nurse, being in teaching, right? Like doing all these things, they're underpaid, overstretched, and underpaid. And this is an expression collectively of how little we're valuing, also monetarily valuing, feminine energy. And that's only going to change. And maybe this is my question to you guys right now that you can have a think about for a second. To what extent have you embraced everything on the right side? And if you look at the things on the right side, how much of this is actually something where you're cringing? You're like, I mean, really honestly, I have a bit of resistance to some of these terms. They don't seem strong to me. They don't seem successful to me. Because this is a question I would like to, I don't know if we got the breakout rooms ready. We're definitely going to run over by like 10 minutes. This is one thing I would love you guys to discuss in the breakout rooms right now. How much are you embracing the right side of this? Okay, cool. Thank you. And that in conjunction with the question that I brought up earlier, what does success look like for you? Because I have redefined my career in many ways where I'm now like, sometimes even if like certain milestones I reach slower, but I'm more in my flow, I'm more connected with myself, like I nurture myself better, my health is better, that for me is more successful. Yeah, and finally, the more I do it, the more successful I get, and the easier success comes to me. So we're going to put you guys into groups of 2, and I'll send you away for like 5 to 8 minutes maybe. And you can have a bit of a discussion on this. Let me just quickly see the chat.
Try to divide it into pairs.
In pairs, yes, please.
Yeah.
I resonate more with the right and feel frustrated. These aspects aren't directly valued by my capitalist society. Yeah, I have a case study on this, Lizzie, later. I actually have one lady who said that to me, and then she stepped in, embraced some of these female qualities at work and got a promotion. So that in itself can be a limiting belief. Because I've seen a lot of men also in leadership positions who are yearning for women to live this stuff more, because they can't do it as well as we can.
Is it okay if I create the rooms now?
Yes. So I will see you guys in like 5 to 8 minutes. Talk about what is your definition of success and which of all of these qualities on the slide do you want to integrate more in your life. Thank you, Emma. No problem if you have to leave early, but remember to connect with me on LinkedIn. Okay. Okay. I'm back in the main room.
I'm sorry, I just had to get a total head count of how many are there because I counted 12. So now I'm gonna make 4 rooms, yeah.
Okay, sounds good. So what happened to Dimitra? Are you going into a room as well, or you have to head out?
Sorry?
I think we still have a couple of people here who don't have a room, right? Can't have the discussion. Telly, Dimitra, Amelia. I cannot hear you. I don't know if the rest can, but no, your audio's pretty much gone almost. Still can't hear you. All right. Okay. All right, technical. All right.
I think all of them should be assigned. Just opening up the rooms.
No, there's 3 people who are still in the room with us. And I don't need to enter a room, but I think you're trying to add me to one.
I'll just remove you from one.
Okay, there we go.
Yeah, I think that should do.
Okay. So I think Lizzie is probably in a room by herself now because she was in the room with me.
Oh. Would you like to go into each of the rooms?
I don't think we have time for this.
Okay.
Like, let's call people back at like 5 past because I think otherwise we're gonna run over too much.
Yeah, no problem.
We'll keep it. Is your camera off on purpose? Probably, right?
I'm just actually in a restaurant because I was looking for a charging spot and it was the only place I could find. But I'm just gonna turn it on anyway.
Yeah.
I just wanted to ask like a good question. Is there any way, because obviously us as women do face imposter syndrome no matter what field we are in, is there any way that women can support each other in or outside the workspace, like just small things that maybe we could look out for each other and small things like that? Because obviously I think more than having a healthy workspace, it all starts from women supporting women and makes us feel like a part of a community, which is what we're trying to build.
Yeah. I can maybe share a couple of things. Is it okay if I share some stuff on it when people come back so that everybody can listen in?
Sure, yeah.
Okay. I'm just going to take a note to make sure I answer that. Yeah, do you guys have any kind of like buddies or something that you assign for people who are in the charity or no?
Sorry?
Do you guys like, what I've seen is like, that's maybe something you guys can think about for your organization, right? Is that they assign buddies. So let's say like you get a buddy assigned and once a month you meet on a Zoom call to like talk through things and stuff like this. So even like little things like this, since you guys already have a community, right? You have a community of women who are clearly on a similar mission, who are interested to connect. That can be like really cool formats to try and offer.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. We had it during undergrad, when I was doing undergrad in India. We had like kind of a buddy system where a senior would have a group of juniors that they would kind of be responsible for. And it was one of the things that got me very acclimatized to undergraduate life. And obviously it was really helpful. And yeah, I think especially in communities like this, I think because now it's already so small and everybody almost talks to everybody. But it was just like having a buddy system would obviously enhance that and make sure it's accessible to everybody.
Yeah, and I think it doesn't always need to be someone who's like senior and someone who's junior. It can just literally be peers, and to make sure that women take enough time to take the space to talk about things, right? Because we're all so busy with our lives usually. And if you know, like, okay, once a month I have this date where for an hour I'm going to talk about my recent successes, get support for my insecurities, like, literally just have a good chat, which is like success and career oriented, but empowering. Like, we don't do that if we don't put something in the calendar, if we don't consciously create the space. I think this is also a great thing about what you guys are doing with this organization, right? That it's something where you're bringing women together to even think about this, right? Tonight, you made sure that they take an hour out for themselves to think about stuff. And that
I think that's so true about the fact that we need to schedule time to kind of celebrate our successes, because we kind of forget that we achieved something because we're always in a rat race in order to like kind of what's next. So yeah, we don't really stop and think about what we have done.
Yeah, and I think this is a huge problem that we don't really do that. And that takes also, again, like power away from us. Yeah. I think we can start calling people back because I don't want to run over like too much. I know we started like 10 minutes later, but still.
Yeah. If we could just aim to wrap up in 5 to 10 minutes, and then obviously we can have people stay back and ask questions after. Yeah.
Good. Yeah. I've cut it short. So I have like 2 major slides left that I'm going to talk about. So I think we should be okay with this. Yeah.
I think everybody should be back.
Welcome back. Hello. There we go. I see some smiles on faces. That's good. Good sign. There we go. Cool. All right. So I'm going to try and wrap this up in 5 minutes. So I'm not going to give this full-on space, although I love to hear about experiences all the time. I just want to kind of close this off with a little note on putting imposter syndrome. Let's put it in the right context, especially Lizzie asked me to talk about this a little bit. The most important thing is, if you work in a field that is probably big on putting diagnosis out, it's not a condition, right? It's a term that has been put out there. I think, I don't know, Harvard Business Review probably talked about it. I think they coined the term. It's a summary term for a mix of things that describes that people falsely think that there's something wrong with them. Yeah, so it's basically like a phenomenon of how we see ourselves, and this has been a term that has been coined, right? So imposter syndrome means I think there's something wrong with me and nobody has noticed, but somebody will find out eventually that what I'm doing here is not what I can do. And a lot of what I spoke about today, and this is obviously like lifelong work if you want to do it, If you're interested to dive deeper into this, you can always reach out to me later and we can talk about how I can support you more with this. But it's about unpacking all the limiting beliefs and the wrong conclusions you have formed about yourself. And if you're taking one thing away from today, I'm hoping that you're taking away that probably a lot of also the questions you guys asked me in the chat is a question of you having chosen the wrong perspective on yourself or imposed a belief on yourself that is holding you back from what you really want to do, right? So your work is not to fix yourself. Your work is to unpack what bullshit stories you have started believing that you should probably unlearn. That is your task, right? So that's what I mean. Like the way out is to realize that this belief or concept is the problem, or there's no truth to it, right? And it's not even about building more strength. It's about rediscovering your strength, rediscovering your worth, rediscovering that there was never something wrong with you in the first place. That is the important part, okay? So imposter syndrome, I think, is a great term to kind of like summarize a lot of what almost every human being on this planet struggles with, which is like doubting themselves, anxiety, thinking we can't trust ourselves, telling ourselves stories about why we can't fully be ourselves because we believe. And I think that's like a weird thing. I don't know why that even happened. It's probably like a philosophical question we can try and observe or examine. But for some reason, people have chosen to think that when they don't get what they want, they are the problem, which is generally not a bad idea because it's about taking responsibility. Of course, you're shaping your life and your decisions. But for some reason, it's gone all the way down to an identity level where people think there's something fundamentally wrong with who I am as a person. Yeah, and that is almost ever a bullshit story. Yeah, even I would argue people who are narcissists are people who have made experiences in life where they started adapting some behavioral patterns because it helped them survive. Yes, and we can unlearn some of these. Like if you really if you feel like you really have toxic traits, come talk to me. We can talk. We can work through that. Yeah. But honestly, like 90-something% of my clients, you're fine, right? Like there's nothing wrong with you as a person. Sometimes we need to tweak certain behavioral patterns, but there's nothing wrong with you. The only thing that's wrong with you is that you don't realize how awesome you are. And I hope that you can take that away when it comes to imposter syndrome. Okay? It's a really great summary term to talk about tendencies in people, but it's not a disease. It's not something that even has any actual truth to it. But this is how powerful our mind is. It can tell us so many self-destructive stories. So use this power to tell yourself self-empowering stories. Because otherwise you're just draining your own energy. And that, like, we need more women in their power if we want to have a good impact on this planet and hopefully still live on it in the next 100 years, you know what I mean? And hopefully beyond that. So let's not waste our energy on doubting some false conclusion or like believing some false conclusions about ourselves. We really need that energy elsewhere. Okay. All right. As promised, if you want to tap into this, you know, being more yourself, your feminine energy, learning how to process your emotions better, dealing with anxiety and doubt, you can scan this now and you can just drop your email in there. And Lizzie, probably we can send it out via email later as well as a link if people want to sign up. So this is kind of like, it's a 3-part course. So you basically, over the course of 3 weeks, you're going to get 1 email a week, and it's like a little bit of input, like usually like a little video, like 10-15 minutes. And then like some reflection questions or little exercises to implement this for yourself, because I always know that you walk away from workshops like this and you're super energized, and then your day starts again and then it's all forgotten. So I hope that this is going to support you all to implement and retain some of the stuff that we spoke about. Okay, you have all the email addresses, Lizzie, right? So then I can send you the presentation. You can send it out to everyone. Okay, sounds good. Cool.
Yeah, amazing. Thank you.
So this is it for me. I hope you guys enjoyed this. I'm happy to stick around and answer any questions if there's still any. But other than that, thank you for your engagement. I had to like cut some of my content short because you guys were like so cool and engaged, which I love, because then I need to talk less. So thank you very much for all your questions. And it was very nice to meet you. And
it
hopefully
was lovely to meet you, Stephanie. If we could just quickly share my screen to do some closing remarks, if that's fine with you,
yes.
That'd be great. Thank you.
Let me just see how I can close this. There we go.
Lovely. So on behalf of the entire WiNUK team, I would like to thank Stephanie for her time and valuable insights. I'm sure it was a learning experience for all of us here. I'm going to have to sit back and write everything down in my journal. It was just brilliantly insightful.